Welcome to the one more episode presented by Movement Disorder Society. In this Leadership Spotlight series, we will interview influential women in the movement disorders and discuss their careers and the great achievements. I'm Itamini Capato, I'm from Brazil, and on behalf of the Women in Movement Disorders subgroup, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Cynthia Comella. Thank you very much for agreeing with this interview, Dr. Comella. Professor Comella is a great. Professor Comella is a neurologist, professor emeritus in the Department of Neurological Sciences at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. And she's a very active member of our Movement Disorder Society. And it's an inspiration for us. And she also serves on the Executive Committee and many others committee in the movement disorders. In our last Pan American session, the Movement Disorders Congress, Dr. Comella received a well-deserved award. Can you please, Dr. Comella, comment on that, please?
On the award, the Leadership Award? I have to say, I was honored and just completely delighted and surprised, and it was wonderful for me. It's one of the highlights. You ask about highlights of your career. It was one of the highlights of my career to be named that. So it was really a thrill.
And we are very proud of you. So let's move on for the next question. I know that you completed the leadership training provided by Sonoma Systems Leadership Challenge and also the leadership facilitator training. So my question is how it impacted you as a woman, and also I'm curious about how you transferred or get used the knowledge on the LEAP program, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, leadership has always been something I think that is an unmet leadership training, an unmet need for women. I think that we don't have our voice, and I think leadership training can give you that voice because it teaches you these principles that allow you to speak up, to value yourself, to understand that your opinions matter. So I did the leadership training in preparation for leading the LEAP group. That's leadership for young members of the MDS. Gosh, I don't even remember it was years ago. And then we started the LEAP program in 2015. That was our first class, if you will. Now it includes both women and men, but it's a diverse group and it includes people from all sections. So every section within the Movement Disorder Society is represented. And what we try to do, it's a year-long course, starting with the two-day didactic, is we really try to get across those things we have learned, not only in leadership training, but throughout our career. And to give a voice to these younger people because they are the future. You are the future of the Movement Disorder Society.
Yes, that's very interesting. The leadership program, the LEAP program, is a huge success, and I'm sure that we will have many good professionals come from this program. So your research on Parkinson's disease, including evaluating therapies, new therapies, and examining the effects of exercise, what I'm particularly I'm interested on. But you also have done impressive research in the dystonia field. So tell me what inspired you to get into the movement disorders field, and how is to move on for the different pathologies and diseases during your academic trajectory?
Yes, that's kind of a complicated question because when I originally started out, I had meant to be a nephrologist. And then I took my neurology during my senior year of internal medicine. So I was just finishing up internal medicine, took neurology, and Christopher Getz happened to be the attending on service. And through him, I was inspired to go back to neurology. I mean, what a beautiful field. How could you leave it and think you're going to just be a nephrologist? Not that there's anything wrong with nephrology. So I ended up going back and doing a residency in neurology. And then with mentorship from Carly Tanner and Chris Getz, ended up doing a movement disorder fellowship and never went back, never had second thoughts about it. It became my passion. And you find when you go into a field, there are certain areas that stir you more than others. And I always say that, follow your passion. And dystonia was one of those. So dystonia was a field that wasn't at that point very well represented by expertise in the field. So I thought, I love it. I'm going to do it. And then botulinum toxin came along, and it gave me even more of a push to go into this very fascinating, albeit somewhat rare disorder. And from there, it was just, what question can I ask? What can I do next? Now, I'm a clinician. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not a basic scientist. So to me, the clinical questions and the treatment questions were the most important. Likewise for Parkinson's disease. I had a very active clinic. I saw many, many, many patients with Parkinson's disease. And to me, it was like, what can we do better? So you have to understand, I've been at it for about 35 years. I started when we only had L-Dopa and pergolide, for example, and anticholinergics. And to see the field grow and be a part of that growth was incredibly exciting for me.
Yeah, it's great. It's important to hear because it's not easy for nobody since the beginning, right? It's demanded a lot of work. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Who was the woman in your personal life or in your professional life who had the greatest influence on who you are now today?
Well, I have to say, from a personal perspective, it was my mom. Because my mom was a way ahead of her time. She had 4 girls and 1 boy. And I know, a big family. It was a lot of fun. But she was the one that said, you can do anything you want to do. You can do whatever you want. And she never let me down. Even when I would call her up and say, I'm going to quit. This is too hard. I'm not going to do this anymore. She'd say, come on, you can do it. In my professional life, I have to say, this is a real hard choice because I've had so many women and men who have, at some point or the other, filled a need. They've been my mentor, whether they knew it or not, throughout my career. So there's so many of them. But if I had to pick one person, it would be Carly Tanner. So Carly really got me started in the research arena when I was a fellow. I mean, I'll never forget it. Our first project, she was looking at dabrisiquin metabolism in Parkinson's disease. And that required measuring levels in urine. So we would have patients collect, a day's worth of urine, and I would be the one carting it over to the U of I so that they could do the dabrisiquin analysis. Now, you would think that's a rather inauspicious beginning for a research career, but it was so fascinating to find out at the end, there's the results, there's the analysis, and this is the answer to that question. And from there, it was just, what question can you ask next? And then that went on into dystonia as well. So it's all a matter, really, I think, at least to me, I followed my passion. If it made my heart go thump, I knew that that was the direction I was going to take.
Yeah.
And that's been really the story of my career.
Yeah, it's a very nice advice as well. So my final question is, if do you have any types for young women coming into the movement disorders field? Pick
Well,
it, two.
I would say my advice to women, particularly targeted to women, but applies to men as well, is really find your voice. Find your voice, value yourself, value what you know. You're not an imposter. You're not there because somebody else decided to put you there. You're not lucky. You have done these things through your own efforts. The other thing I would say to women is set your priorities. We talk about work-life balance, and it's important to keep that in mind if you want to keep we used to call it burnout, but now it's wellness. If you want to keep your wellness, if you want to keep the sense of passion, don't make it so that you have divided yourself into so many little pieces that it's really impossible to do. Your family is important. Your work is important. Your research is important. So prioritize. Make it so that, there is a certain amount of time that you spend with each thing, sort of like a list, if you and don't make it feel like I can't do this anymore. This is overwhelming. And when you start to get that feeling, go to your mentor, go to your friend, go to someone and say, how do I sort this out? Because it's really important that you continue your contribution and you continue your passion and you don't get waylaid. Exercise is a good example of that. I got into exercise just because of what patients told me. I did one of the first exercise studies, participated in the Sparks 1 study, and all of my patients, you gotta do it. Now they say, I don't want to. So usually it took about 3 times of me kind of pushing, or getting them involved in either a research program or an exercise program that they could do. Again, don't ask other people to do what you won't do. You have to model the way, so to speak.
Yes, thank you. So Dr. Comella, thank you very much for your time and for sharing with us your inspiring talk. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much again for having me. It was an honor to be able to be interviewed by you.